Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It is 9 o'clock on Friday, so you know what that means. This is our weekly show, Friday Friends. I am Deb Burton, your host and executive director of RI Elder Info. And if you're new to watching, it is something that we do every week at 9 a.m. across our social media platforms, where we bring you information and resources that you or someone you know needs to know about. And we are having a super timely and important conversation today. So I hope you hit the like button, the share button, all those social media cues to let people know that they really need to check this out, because our topic today is voting and what is involved. And we know that it is an election season, although the things that we're going to talk about are actually something that we need to know about all of the time. So again, hit the like button, the share button, all those social media cues to make sure as many people as possible check out this information. So as you know, we are a nonprofit organization, and we would not be able to bring you Friday Friends without the support of our sponsors. So a huge thank you to Point 32 Health Foundation, United Healthcare, Oak Street Health, as well as 321 Media and England Studios. And I am extremely grateful for the support of Washington Trust, who has been one of our sponsors this summer for Friday Friends specifically, as well as McCarthy Law. I have a quick minute for with McCarthy Law.
Here at McCarthy Law, we practice in the areas of estate planning, long-term care planning, elder care law, and residential real estate. Our focus is really on providing peace of mind to our clients.
If you're interested in scheduling a consultation with our office, you can feel free to reach out to us at 401-541-5540. You can also reach out via website at www.mccarthylawri.com. You also should check out our social media, both on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, for some helpful tips and tricks.
Well, everybody, I would like to welcome Peggy Desjarlais from United Way and the new program, United We Vote RI. Hi, Peggy. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm doing great.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on today. I am super excited to hear what you have to say, because with this being an election season for the president, I think there's a lot of focus on voting and how is that being done, and what are all of the kind of the ins and outs that we can rely on with a bipartisan, not directing anybody to do anything, because as a nonprofit, RI Elder Info can't do that. So from a high level perspective, what is United We Vote?
Thanks so much for the question. United We Vote is United Way of Rhode Island's initiative to increase voter participation. We've got some metrics that say increasing voter participation by 25% over the 2016 election. And to get out the vote at that enormous kind of an increase, it's a huge goal, and I'm really excited about it. To increase by that much, we need to empower a number of different communities to get out to their polls, to access the services like mail-in ballots and early voting. We need to empower so many different communities to come out and use their voice like this. The senior and disability community in Rhode Island has a pretty good voter turnout rate, but I know that getting information into all your viewers is going to help that even more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the United We Vote initiative, is that a new initiative, and what are the different steps or pieces of it? And I apologize, they've decided to cut the grass right behind me right now, so you might hear the lawnmower for a couple of minutes.
That's podcasting, isn't it?
It is.
The United We Vote program is kind of a new initiative for United Way of Rhode Island. we did some stuff similar in election years past in getting out the vote, but this initiative is really targeted in a way that those previously weren't. The excuse me.
See, we love it when the computer does weird stuff in the middle of like a conversation, because that's real life.
It's
And
true.
that is the fun of doing podcasts.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
The United We Vote campaign is a combination of initiatives. There's the voter engagement that we're doing in person, getting folks educated and registered at tables all over the state. There's
So let me stop you right
Yeah.
there. I have a question for you. When you're saying you're out at tables helping people get registered to vote, what does one need in order to register to vote? What kind of paperwork, documents, like how does one register to vote?
Great question. When I'm at these tables, I need folks to be able to give me their address. The way that I am able to check that they are registered to vote is by using vote.ri.gov. And once I'm in, I can confirm that they are already registered with their correct address, or that they're not yet registered and they need to register with the Secretary of State's office. To register to vote for the first time, you're going to need a valid photo ID.
Okay.
That photo ID, if it's valid, it's got your proof of residence right on it. The registration process can take a little bit, which is why there's a little bit of a delay from the registration deadline to the election. It's 30 days that you've got to register ahead of the election.
Okay. And I think that there's a primary in the middle of September this year. So is the opportunity to register to vote in the primary, have we missed that?
That has passed.
Okay. But they can still register for any of the other elections coming up later this year, right?
Exactly. The general election is the next opportunity to register. That primary election, although the opportunity to register to vote for that primary election is passed, it's just as important to be able to register for the general election that's coming up real soon. And the deadline to register for the general election is, I believe, October 10.
And when people have to present a photo ID, does it have to be like your real ID, driver's license that has the star, or could it be like your Rhode Island state ID? And I know Providence has Providence resident photo IDs. What kind of ID is acceptable?
All three that you mentioned are valid. So fantastic list of examples on your part, Deb. If you are curious about whether the ID that you have, if it's not one of those three that you listed, if you're curious about whether the ID that you have in your wallet is valid for that purpose, I'm going to refer you to 211. That's United Way's Human Services Helpline, and they've been deputized specifically by the Secretary of State to be able to answer calls and answer that kind of like what if question about registration, as well as information about polling places and timelines and dates. I said 211 because those are the three numbers that you dial on your phone. It's similar to the emergency line where it's just the three numbers, 211.
Very good. And so if, I don't know, my office is in North Kingstown, but I live in a whole other city or town. If I'm out grabbing lunch and I see you in North Kingstown, can I register at your table for the town I live in, or do I have to wait until you have a table in my town?
So you can come up to my table wherever you see me, wherever you see this face, wherever you see a voter registration drive. The address that you use to register to vote has to be your legal residence. That's especially important in a community of folks like seniors and folks with disabilities who might be living in a place that has a different address than their legal residence. Considering care homes, temporary or long-term, that's definitely something important to consider.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's something that we'll maybe touch base on maybe more in the future as to how one does that specifically in long-term care. Stay tuned on that one. If it's not, if I don't find you in the community, where else can people go to register to vote?
The best place to register to vote is at your local election office. In a lot of towns in Rhode Island, it's the town council office, it's the city council office. For more details about just where that is, you can use the vote.ri.gov website, or again, call 211. All roads lead to 211.
Yes. So, okay. So we have now taken the steps to register to vote. What are the next steps? Is everybody eligible to vote? Like, is it only if you believe in one party or another party or anything like that? Like, what are the steps necessary? Maybe you're new to Rhode Island, you've just registered to vote. How do you figure out even like where to go?
For sure. Then once you've registered, the next steps are understanding who is running for office in your local space, understanding what that ballot looks like. The questions that are on the ballot can be a little bit long, but there's always translation guides so that you can understand what those questions are really getting at. You can take a lot of joy, like I do, in knowing that the trusted people around you in your community are looking at the same ballot measures. They're looking at the same folks that are running for election, all the way from like town council and city council members, school committee members, through your local representatives, the folks that are going to be at the state house for you, through to the president. Everyone's kind of thinking about these questions. Who is going to bring my needs forward? Who is going to speak truth to power in these important spaces? In conversation with community members, I think that everyone can bring their own perspectives and we can learn a lot about how to make those decisions. Make sure that you're talking to those trusted sources, the people that you trust for information about where to turn in a lot of other questionable situations. When you are looking for information online, or if you're turning to the media for that kind of information, it's important that you already have kind of a trusted relationship with that media. I see a lot of information that comes across my social media feed that I don't trust. But
Are you trying to tell me that Bigfoot was not walking through Coventry this past weekend? Really? That's not true. There might be fake things on social media.
I'd say a bear is more likely than Bigfoot at this point, Deb.
See, that's the importance of fact checking.
Truly.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So when you register to vote, do you have to do it every time? And is it for, like, once you're registered, can you now vote for your city and town council and your school committee all the way up to Senate, Congress, president? Is it like one registration and now you're good to go year after year as long as your address stays the same?
As long as your address stays the same, exactly right. There are instances where a state will decide to kind of go through all of the voter registrations and look at any that may have been duplicated or maybe they think are a little suspicious. But Rhode Island has done a fantastic job, along with a lot of other states, in making sure that when folks register to vote, they stay registered to vote. If there's any question about whether you're registered to vote right now, today, the folks at 211 or the vote.sos.ri is a great place to check. And it takes very little time to check that you're registered to vote at the right place for this upcoming election.
And I'm going to have Secretary of State Amore on to talk about, how do they make sure that, say, dead people aren't voting, or people who are not in Rhode Island anymore aren't voting. So we're going to have a conversation about that on an upcoming episode of Friday Friends, because I think that's one of the things that people get concerned about is, are the people that are Rhode Islanders actually the ones that are voting? And who is able to vote? So are individuals who are disabled or have maybe vision or hearing impairments, are there ways for, well, can they vote? And how do they vote? Like physically, how?
I'm so excited that I get to tee up this conversation with that you're going to have with Secretary Amore. The secretary and his office have been doing a fantastic job at making sure that every Rhode Islander, every citizen of the state of Rhode Island that is registered to vote has the right to vote. For folks specifically with disabilities, folks that have mobility, that use mobility aids, folks with hearing impairment, sight impairment, you can vote. That given that you are registered, even if you are under guardianship, as long as a judge has not said you may not vote. If you haven't heard that from a judge, you can vote. And you can vote means that you have the right to vote. That doesn't mean that there aren't further barriers.
Right.
The right to vote is enshrined at that, or it's supported at that legal level, but making sure that the polling places are following through on accessibility requirements is a huge task for Secretary Amore and his team. And they've done
absolutely
a fantastic job. Some of those are physical considerations, making sure that entrances have ramps, that those ramps aren't blocked, that there are safe handrails, non-slip areas. We'll be voting on November 5th, and we know that it can get a little slippery out there during that season. So I know that I'm going to benefit immensely from those non-slip surfaces.
Absolutely.
Once you get into that polling place, every polling place in the state of Rhode Island has an accessible polling booth. That is a polling booth that is a little bit wider and a little bit lower. So folks who use mobility aids can access it more comfortably. Folks who need to sit down can access it more comfortably.
So if you had to wait in line and you're using a walker or a cane, that accessibility booth will give you an opportunity to be able to sit down to actually fill out your ballot.
Absolutely. And if you're using a mobility aid and you're concerned about the length of lines, or if you're just plumb concerned about how long you're going to have to stand there, if it's tough for you to stand, calling ahead to your local board of elections and letting them know, hey, I have this concern. Can you give me some support in this area? That's a great option. But
if you're disabled, it's not like you're handing your ballot over to somebody else to fill out for you. You still have to be the one to fill it out, right?
That's right. So unless you request assistance, which is also an option for folks with disabilities, I think Help America Vote Act, the HAVA, grants a number of accommodations that you as the voter get to choose which accommodation fits you. If it is difficult for you to write, to use a pen, you can request that somebody else uses the pen for you and does exactly what you tell them to. They have taken an oath, and if you bring your own person, if you bring your neighbor, friend, grandchild to the polling place to help you do that, they swear an oath as well. If
grandchild over 18.
True facts. If you can write, but it's difficult for you to read, having an assistant to read out each of the ballot questions and the folks that are running for election could be an accommodation. If you've got specific accommodations besides the ones that I have mentioned, the Board of Elections is exactly the place to call.
Awesome. Wow. There's a lot of information and resources. And I feel like lately I hear a lot more about the importance of voting. And I think maybe people have not been as engaged in voting as maybe they could be. So, as United We Vote moves forward, you're going to have community events. What are also other opportunities for people to really increase their awareness? How else can they reach you other than call 211? Are there other options for people to reach out to learn more?
For sure. So, United We Vote is also a targeted advertisement campaign directed to getting out the vote.
And is it targeted to encourage people to vote for one party or another or anything like that? Or is it just go pick somebody?
We do not have an opinion about who you vote for. What we want is for you to get out and vote. Before we move to the importance of voting, Deb, I want to make sure that folks know that there are ways to cast your ballot that don't involve going to your physical polling place on the day.
Oh, yeah.
Besides showing up physically in person, you also have the opportunity to vote in the state of Rhode Island by mail. And you also have the opportunity to cast your vote in person at your elections office before the day of. So if maybe standing in a line is a barrier, if being around like large groups of people is not a comfortable situation for you, you can go to, it's open now for the primaries, you can go to your elections office and you can cast your ballot early.
Okay. Now, are they reading them and tallying them? Are they counting them? Like if people go early, do they start keeping count then, or do they wait until the day of and then unseal and count everything at once?
I don't know. That's a great question.
I'm going to ask Secretary Amore next week.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I cannot overstate how important it is to cast your vote as a senior in Rhode Island, Deb.
Yeah. And it's one of the biggest populations that actually does come out to vote. So I think that's awesome.
It's really exciting. It's exciting that folks with so much hindsight can lend that wisdom to this democratic process. The variety of perspectives that get to weigh in on this really important set of decisions makes me feel so hopeful that we are making the right call for everybody.
That's it. Absolutely. So tell me more about the importance of it and the additional details.
I'd love to. A lot of the programs that seniors access have been funded recently by money from the American Rescue Plan Act. I'm not going to get all technical about it, but those were federal dollars that the state used to empower cities, and towns, and nonprofits like United Way to distribute food and healthcare and social services during the pandemic. We ramped up a whole bunch of services that really benefited members of our community in ways that we haven't even been able to measure yet because it's still happening. That money has mostly been spent or allocated elsewhere. So the pandemic pockets are coming up a little dry. Yeah. Social services are scaling their operations way down. They're reducing staff and reducing capacity, which reduces the availability of those essential services. But it's not all bad news, right? It means that we have to act. We have to voice our opinion to keep these programs that are so important to our lives and livelihoods up and running. Voting is the best way to keep food pantries open. It's the best way to keep the navigator lines running for healthcare. Town councils and city council members are on the ballot. Those are folks who decide where to locate those essential services in every little town. State representatives for the House and Senate are on the ballot. Those folks are going to decide how those programs are funded and what laws are passed to support those programs. And of course, the presidential election, the headline, is going to determine how the United States invests in seniors for the next 4 years. And The long-term effects of that are huge. The president gets to select Supreme Court justices, so how they vote, how those justices, not how they vote, how they choose, how they adjudicate.
How they choose to administer the rule of law.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That is going to have ripple effects for forever.
So it's all of these different pieces. And I think, it, like you said, like the presidential elections, like they get the headlines because they've got the deep pockets to advertise. But in our own communities, we get to decide whether or not there is a new football field for the school or a new snowplow for the city or town, or if there will be additional programming at the senior center. And those decisions are made at the voting box.
Absolutely. Those decisions are made by the people who show up, by the people who cast the ballot. Your vote is your voice, and we want to hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the ARPA money is running out, and these programs need funding, or some people may feel that it's okay for those programs to run out. And that's part of the whole voting mechanism is you get to say what is or is not important to you in your community and choose someone to be the voice of your community.
Absolutely. Thinking about it as your perspective and your voice is crucial to making the right decision for you. It's easy to think about the choice for a presidential election as something that is so far away from your own personal experience. It's easy to think that it's going to have impacts on like other people,
right?
But it impacts you, so you have to vote with your conscience.
Absolutely. Peggy, we have covered a lot of information very quickly. If people have questions, can they reach out to you, or how do they get to the United We Vote RI? What is the best way if people have questions?
Absolutely. So if you've got questions about your voting pathway, making a plan, your accessibility measures, I would urge you to contact the Secretary of State's office, your local Board of Elections, or when those offices are closed, 211. 211 is open 365, 7 days a week, 24/7 in nearly 100 languages, as I'm learning.
Wow.
That
is amazing.
They do fantastic work. If folks want to visit our website and get the kind of information that I shared with you today in text and in, I think, Spanish, Portuguese, or Haitian Creole, they can visit unitedwevoteRI.org.
So that sign right there, United We Vote RI, there we go, .org.
That's right. And
awesome.
If you're interested in hosting a voter registration table at an upcoming event, if you've got a farmer's market that you love to come to that can squeeze one more table in there and you'd like to invite me along, you can email me at peggy.desjarlais@unitedwayri.org.
That is awesome. And then they can have you come out and give this information face to face, answer those questions, all of those different things all at one time. Awesome.
That's great.
Awesome. And we've got the website running below here so people can do that. They've got your email running below. And then I think just the other pieces, if people have questions, they can call 211.
That's right, Deb.
Awesome. Peggy, I am so grateful. I know I kept you on much longer than I promised I would, but I think what we've talked about today has been so important. And this has been just a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for the time and for having me here.
Absolutely. Everybody, as a nonprofit, we don't care who you vote for. What we want to see you do is participate in the process. So we're going to be dedicating some of our Friday friends to educating the public about voting and answering some of those questions that seem to be coming up. We're going to hear directly from the experts because we want to make sure that you have accurate information. So I hope you will all join me again next week for our next Friday Friends at 9 a.m. as we continue this conversation about education and voting. In the meantime, I look forward to seeing you all again. Be well and be kind.
If you liked this video, please follow us on social media and subscribe on YouTube. For more information, visit rielderinfo.com or call 401-585-0509. If you have any questions, email deb@rielderinfo.com.